traditional, super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. I hope you are doing very, very well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional food prep and storage, traditional cooking, and of course, traditional artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add the taste of tradition to your life. I want to take a minute and say welcome to all the new listeners. Welcome back to all of the veteran homestead-loving regulars who stop by the FarmCast every week. I appreciate you all so much. And I'm so excited to share with you what's going on at the farm this week. And we will have homestead life updates. And I'm going to talk about today traditional healing wisdom. And in alignment with that, my recipe today is going to be a stinging nettles infusion. All right, let's get to it. Life is moving along here at such a rapid pace. At the homestead here at the Wytheville's farmers market. We will be there. The last winter market is this Saturday, and we will be there from 10 a.m. to noon. The following week, that's going to be Saturday, the 3rd of May, the market opens up for the summer season, and we will be there each and every week from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. And I've decided to let go of a lot of the celery starts that I planted a couple of months ago. Now, celery is kind of hard to get started, but it's pretty easy once you get it going. So stop by and pick up a plant or two. Celery grown in your own garden is nothing like you would buy in the store. 100 to 110 days and you will have wonderful celery. Again, fresh celery is so different from store-bought. It has an intense flavor and smell. It's almost peppery. I planted Utah tall. It's kind of the standard for a green celery. Now, you can mound dirt up around it and blanch the stalks, and that will actually make the flavor a little bit more mild. I really like the full celery flavor. It's so great. Now, let me talk about the cows. Yesterday, Claire's udder was so big and tight, it looked like it was about to burst. We thought, surely tomorrow it will happen. And it did. Now, she had trouble last year, and I was very anxious at this point for her to make a delivery without issue. But after I got to the farmer's market, I got a call from Scott. Claire had her calf without issue. Yet another bull calf. 2 more calves to go. Will we even get a heifer? That's a girl calf for those of you not farm animal savvy. We're really looking for heifers. We're still waiting on one ewe to have her lambs. Oh, and the triplets are a very unique situation. A couple of days ago, I noticed one of the triplets was kind of hunched over. He was also much less bulky than the other 2. And I'm sure he got his colostrum in the first day, or he wouldn't have made it as long as this, because this is like 4 or 5 days into his life. And without colostrum, they really don't last more than a few days. It is absolutely required for any young ruminant animal to survive more than a few days to have colostrum from, hopefully from their mother. But his mom was definitely not standing still for him at this point. I don't know, perhaps the others were pushing him out. And that brings me to the interesting situation. We started giving him a bottle to supplement his nutrition. However, we left him to run with his mom and siblings. She doesn't let him nurse, but she let him hang out. He's very fast, and he was keeping up with her very well. He stays closer to her, actually, than the other 2. I mean, if she moves, he's right there. We were kind of hoping to get him to come running to us so we didn't have to chase him down to give him his bottle. Our sheep are not wild, but they are not tame to our touch either. We can get to about 10 feet from them before they all run off. They'll start walking away slowly, and then they'll all just run in a whole flock. But we have a shepherd's hook to catch him up. So we get close to them, and then I get a little closer, and we're kind of up against the fence. So I kind of force them to a point where they have to run past Scott, and he reaches out and snags the little guy as he runs by. And once we have him, he eagerly drinks from that bottle. He knows where his food's coming from. So this morning we had to alter that plan a little. He's just not thriving. He's still very small compared to the other lambs. And we decided to keep him close and feed him more often. Scott caught him up again and put him in a little dog cage that we have for just this kind of situation. And Lambert has straw bedding and is keeping Scott company while he lays blocks for the creamery. In the garden, we have strawberries that are all now planted. We bought this straw to use as mulch, and it was a bad purchase. It was full of seeds. I mean, usually you get a little bit of seed sometimes in straw. This was full of seed. So we have all kinds of wheatgrass growing in the strawberry bed and also in the potatoes because I piled it high to cover the potatoes. You can use straw mulch on potatoes. Normally it's a pretty great idea. Using straw instead of dirt. It's much lighter cover where the potatoes will form, and so there's less resistance for those potatoes so they can grow really big. That is if we can keep the wheatgrass pulled out. Now let me talk a little bit about the herd share status. We're working with the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Organization to get our contracts in order. They support farmers, especially in Virginia, with getting this kind of legal piece of paper together so that we can operate this herd share where you can own part of the herd and you can have your own milk products straight out of the cow that way. No processing. So this a great group of people, again, that are helping small farmers all over the country with all kinds of legal issues. But the herd shares are one thing that they focus on quite strongly. So as soon as the contract is ready, I'll let you know so you can purchase your part of the herd and get going on having your own milk products available for weekly pickup. I'm experimenting with yogurt, and I must say it is the best yogurt I have ever had, and I eat a lot of yogurt. Another plug for the farmers market, I will have samples for tasting each week. These cows truly are unique, and your yogurt, butter, and cheese will reflect that. All right, enough about the homestead here. Let me talk about traditional healing wisdom. I mentioned, I think either in the newsletter or the last podcast. Anyway, recently a time or two I've mentioned that herbalism is kind of a hobby of mine. I don't have time right now really to work it so much, but we really need a lot more herbalists in our communities. And so I want to talk a little bit about traditional healing wisdom from days gone past. Much of the issues with healthcare up until the later part of the 20th century revolved around access to care. And that was it. I know it seems like people died from all sorts of things that we can easily treat today, and there is truth in that. But I want to point out that much of the problem in the past, and actually still is in the part of the country where I live in rural Appalachia, it's access to care. And that's what it was like back then. It's like people are spread out, and there's just little access that people would have to any kind of knowledge at all about medicine, and someone who knew about medicine. So, and it was all herbal medicine back in the day, and a lot of it worked pretty well. But again, if you weren't at least an herbalist, your chances of getting medical care in a timely manner were greatly diminished when so much of the population lived in rural areas. And I want to take a moment here and point you in the direction of a resource that I have used for many, many years, herbmentor.com and learningherbs.com. I think it's just learningherbs.com now. I started with them shortly after they started their mission to see an herbalist in every community. And there is so much valuable information on their site. They've been out there for years, and they've been building that website, and it's a great, great community. It's a monthly fee to join, and you have access to all of the resources. There's all kinds of basic courses, and there are interviews and there's a whole community where people are discussing back and forth. There a lot of these people on that site have really been practicing their craft in their communities for a long time. So if you're interested in that, again, we need an herbalist in every community, and I support them in their mission for that. Let's see. All right, let me talk about just what is the village herbalist and or your local community herbalist. They are the mainstay of herbalism, the nurturers and protectors of good health. They're so the idea to have someone educated and experienced in the use of herbs for every general health, for all kinds of general health needs, minor illnesses and injury, it is a very noble one to have that mission. And the role of the herbalist complements the work of other holistic care providers and even modern medical providers. A community herbalist can be invaluable in just educating people about good health practices and helping them recover from common family ailments. Generally, this would be your first line to give people answers about how plants can assist in their basic care. When I was growing up, I was fortunate to have a mother who was not afraid of practicing some home care medicine. And while she wasn't a village herbalist, she didn't really use herbs, but she was educated in what to do for things, cuts, bruises, colds, diarrhea, and so on. She even knew exactly what to do when, at 12 years old, I burned my left hand very badly. So badly, I spent 2 weeks in the hospital healing. But her quick thinking, her calmness in the face of disaster and early action with cold water and ice, and a methodical but hair-raising drive to the local clinic were invaluable to my healing process. We didn't have like an emergency room. We had to actually go to the local clinic. Fortunately, it was during the day and they were open. And then I was in shock. And so they sent me to the hospital. And the hospital treatment was an age-old one. They used silver nitrate. It's a natural, it's just silver. And it forms a crust on the burned surface where the skin used to be. And that's really important because leaking fluids due to no skin to hold it in, that runs neck and neck with infection as the leading cause of complications and death in extensive burns. You just literally leak out all of your fluids if you don't have that skin. And so the silver nitrate makes like this crust on your exposed flesh until the skin can grow back. Okay, back to the traditional village herbalists. They can and do provide education and healing techniques to their local communities. And I want to stress the importance of education, again, because I had a wonderfully educated mother when it came to basic first aid. I benefited and also learned much of the basic medical knowledge that every woman, I believe, in the world should have. Like when my daughter was, she was maybe 2 months old, and she had this really high fever. And so we were debating about whether to take her to the doctor. And this is in the 1970s. And we didn't run to the doctor for every little thing back then. We had knowledge about what to do. And so we stripped her down. We kept her cool. We bathed her in alcohol so that her skin was cool. Her great-grandmother just rocked her on her. It was a wonderful bonding time as well for those two. But we knew what to do. And we watched it. We kept monitoring it. If we hadn't been able to get that fever down, we would have had to take her to the doctor. And so you have to know that. You have to know what to do. And then also, if it doesn't work, when do you make that decision to actually go to the doctor? So teaching basic first aid for everyday use and using herbs also for specific therapeutic purposes, that has long been the province of what I would term the village herbalist, your local person who can treat some minor injuries and illnesses. Now, I guess many people today, either they never had access to that kind of education, and I'm not really even talking about the herbs at this point. I'm just talking about basic first aid and, what what to do about some simple illnesses that a village herbalist would be able to deal with. So they either never had it, or they've lost the traditional link with basic survival skills that was developed over millennia. That even in let's say in the 1800s, where maybe you didn't have access to care, you didn't have access to some kind of a medical professional, but there were certain things that everybody knew, like how to deal with the fever and diarrhea and things like that. So I think there is a desire for a lot of us to return to this basic understanding, moving away from the conveyor belt apparatus that is our modern healthcare service, getting back to a more simpler and natural lifestyle. That grows ever stronger as human experience becomes more complex, and the further removed we are from our connection with the earth. And so Western culture kind of pushes incessantly for more modern access to medical care. But how much of those costs would be reduced if we were simply educated in what to do for a fever, a cough, diarrhea? And some of it, of course, is absolutely, absolutely necessary. But the number of times I think that we take our kids or we go to the doctor for things that if we had just some basic knowledge, we could take care of ourselves, or we could make our own medicine. So the more will always be balanced by less somewhere else. And so we have less connection with our traditional herbal practices. Today's less is less knowledge of how to take care of ourselves and our families during the simplest of illnesses. And don't let me forget to mention that a huge part of that education is knowing when you need that specialized medical care, and that can only be obtained from someone with far more education. So context does matter. Looking at our medicine, how we care for ourselves, reveals the need for greater knowledge and more personal responsibility for the health of ourselves and our families. So we want to eat well, of course, and I do promote a lot of the traditional ways of raising food so that it is healthy and sustainable and kind to the animals. But then there's also some education about our health, about how do our physical bodies actually work? What's going on when you have a stomach virus? What might be happening if you have a fever, and why is it important to get that fever down? Just simple. It's simple stuff that I just don't think that it's not taught, but it's stuff that we need to know. And in my opinion, a functional healthcare system, first and foremost, it's going to take place nearby. Caring begins with people who know us. And this is where you or someone can be that village herbalist. And certainly, again, conventional medical care serves a good purpose in apt situations. We definitely want that 7 to 9 minutes with the doctor should the need arise. Yet, somewhere between our body's innate ability to heal itself with a little knowledgeable support and conventional medicine's high-dollar attempt at a cure lie many situations that can be bridged by common sense and a compassionate connection to the community that we serve. And is it truly alternative, or is it simply a return to the basics of what has worked throughout our time here on Earth? More than 83 million Americans reported using what is termed alternative medicine in 1998. And that was according to a nationwide survey. It was published in the Journal of American Medical Association. So that was in 1998, more than 20 years ago. The therapies most commonly used were chiropractic, herbs, massage, and relaxation techniques. But the numbers are not really telling the consideration here. People are turning to healing modalities that work effectively, cost less, and do the desired good with fewer side effects than mainstream medicine. So the term alternative medicine is revealing. It completely overlooks the fact that from the perspective of someone born in the 1800s, it might seem as though the medical profession threw out the baby with the bathwater, as each modern technique became the new miracle, and the connection to the simpler forms of health and basic knowledge completely eroded. To all of the high tech, really, you got to be really smart to know this stuff. So of course, and again, there's value in that, but we threw out the baby with the bathwater. We still need to know the basics as individuals. History shapes all cultural destiny, and medicine is no exception. If we examine thousands of years of herbal knowledge gathered from plant-based experience that preceded the allopathic doctoring to which many now turn in times of injury, what could we learn? What could we learn? Even doctors have been quoted as saying that a good 3/4 of the people coming to see them, they've come to the wrong place. Patients, they come at the first sign of discomfort or irregularity, and they're expecting a quick fix for obvious symptoms. And this is another thing that's going to need to change. Over-the-counter medications, they've got all the glitter that advertising can muster, yet a pill prescribed by a doctor carries a heavier stick. Naturally, people want assurance and to understand the current predicament of their bodies, and they don't understand. And we're fearful and inconvenienced and downright whiny. And we place our responsibilities at the feet of professionals. And we pay for expensive services rather than taking it upon ourselves to learn a little bit about the human body and how to work in harmony with it and how to bring it back into balance if it gets out of balance just a little bit. So to doctor or not to doctor, it's been estimated that 70 to 80% of the people who go to the doctor have nothing wrong with them that couldn't be cleared up by a vacation, a pay raise, or relief from everyday emotional stress. Stress is the key. So this is the education and support that local herbalists could easily provide. Education and coaching. And a few herbs as well that can help you with some relaxation. Only 10% of patients visiting their doctor for that 9 minutes. That required a half a day off from work, by the way. And only 10% of them actually require drugs or surgery to get well. Even though they might get that prescription, it's really not required for them to get well. And approximately 10% have diseases for which there is no known cure. Most illnesses run a benign course if they're left to what the Hippocratic physicians called the healing power of nature. You get that? Most illnesses run a benign course if left to the healing power of nature. The natural healing mechanisms of the body build in an 80% recovery rate from all illnesses, regardless of medical intervention. But the mothers and other caretakers would need to know how to treat at home and when it is beyond their knowledge. It's a scary thing, I know. It's much easier to just go to the doctor and be done with it. And we're thankful for good doctors. Medical intervention proves itself whenever a surgeon repairs bones or crushes stones, or you get antibiotics, or an internist gives you insulin. A pediatrician spots a problem and nips it in the bud before it can cause greater damage. Yet, many situations actually call for more personal involvement and some homegrown understanding. Basic education about what it takes to live a healthy life. Interfering in the natural processes of the body can cause trouble. There's a term, it's called iatrogenic harm. It's a treatment-caused harm, and it's on the rise. It's every doctor's worst nightmare, that their treatment actually causes greater harm. And it's actually happening more and more, especially in the hospital setting. Mistakes, just incorrect dosages, all kinds of things that the more that you get into interfering, the more chance you have of making a mistake. So, and the listed side effects of pharmaceutical drugs often gives us pause to consider the additional health risks incurred just to obtain a predicted benefit. So our physicians work humbly within these limitations, and that's what makes them good at what they do. I do want to point out, however, that doctors are as human as the rest of us. They are not infallible. They do not know your child the way you know your child. Educate yourself or find a local herbalist to help you understand. It will be well worth it. You don't have to depend on your doctor to tell you what's going on. There's plenty of education out there to tell you how certain systems work. So taking responsibility for ourselves, our families, and our communities. You want to take care of yourself and your family for the majority of your everyday health needs. Empowerment begins with knowledge, and herbalists can help them use plant remedies intelligently, with respect. So going to medical school is not essential to be able to help people feel better. We've deeded the legal practice of medicine to an elite group on the basis of one type of training. And there's this one-size-fits-all approach to medical care. So interest in an herbal approach to health is actually growing quite rapidly. Now, let me bring up another point here, though, that even though you have this high regard for natural living, it's also very often, and even myself, I was this way when I first started learning, it comes accompanied with the perception of illness that we've been raised to view as routine. So we take this herb for this condition and that herb for that condition, like we were taking pills or something. And that's not really how it works. Modern medicine insists upon a physical explanation for each cause and effect, and then the symptoms are treated accordingly. Yet the whole reason that the matter arose in the first place often goes completely ignored and unresolved. So holistic plant medicine goes well beyond this kind of narrow-minded and simplistic thinking. Each individual has a different constitution. Different therapeutic strategies for seemingly similar conditions must take into account the biological, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual aspects of each individual. So a good herbalist would not only help people become medically self-sufficient, but would also share the journey of the big picture of who we are as a whole person, a whole body, a whole functioning being. And it's quite the change in thinking from this pill for that thing. We're very mechanical approach to health, rather than seeing your whole body, your emotions, your mental state, your spiritual state. All of those things go into who you are as a healthy individual. There is no one-size-fits-all in good health care. Traditional healing wisdom, or using plants as medicine, predates written history. Anthropologists believe that people learned how to use plants for healing by trial and error and by watching birds and other animals. And wild animals, a lot of them possess an instinct to seek out plants that are good to eat and filled with vital nutrition, while avoiding those that might be poisonous. And some traditional herbalists think that some of that actually used to be a part of our nature as well, but we've really, really lost sight of that at this point. And so plant by plant, humans added to a collective knowledge that it's been handed down through the ages by word of mouth, and later it was actually put down in written documents. And regardless of a given cultural understanding of plants, if you needed to staunch blood, you used yarrow. If you had influenza, garlic was your go-to plant. And plantain for bee stings is another treatment. It spanned continents. Such plants, they showed their effectiveness time and time again, in all places all around the world. Now, let me talk a little bit about Western herbalism, or here in North America. How did we get our Western herbalism tradition? It's kind of unique. So we had the Aboriginal people, and they had a multitude of uses for the plants of this continent. So let's see, we had the Lakota, the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, other plains tribes. They were the first to discover and use echinacea. It was natural to the habitat out there, and they used it for its immune stimulating ability. You saw eastern woodland tribes boil wild mint and inhale the steam to help relieve congested lungs and sinuses. The Apache, the Hopi, and the Navajo rubbed powdered cayenne on arthritic joints to help block pain and reduce swelling. And the Chippewa and other Great Lakes tribes boiled willow bark. They had a lot of willow up there, and they drank the tea to reduce fevers and headaches. It has the basic element that they use in aspirin. It comes from willow bark. Modern science has identified many of the plant components that validate the use of each of these treatments exactly as they were prescribed. Now, as the European population of the U.S. grew, many of those Europeans learned the Indian way of using the local herbs. So they brought the European treatments and they combined them with the local native treatments. And then these were passed along to eager settlers and pharmaceutical entrepreneurs. They needed knowledge of the native botanical medicine. What worked in Europe, if you didn't have that same plant available, you had to have something similar. So European herbal lore and Native American plant wisdom, they joined together. And they united many traditions under one banner, and that's Western herbalism was born. Now let's talk a little bit about modern medicine. Today, much of the world population continues to use herbs as their primary source of medicine. The World Health Organization estimates that 80% of the world's people rely on herbs for their health. An unbroken chain of herbal knowledge has continued to be passed down in many, many cultures around the world. For instance, the long-standing teachings of Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic health practitioners in India. Now, unfortunately for many of us in the Western world, this chain has been broken, but they still use it a lot over there in the Far East. We've fooled ourselves into believing that synthetic medicine made in a lab by people wearing white coats has more worth than the humble dandelion in our backyards. We still need the perception and conscious intelligence of our ancestors to be embodied anew in every generation by women and men who are called to be healers. We still need this. They include the country doctor who's well-versed in spending time with patients, the village herbalist who uses plant medicines for treating an array of diseases, a midwife who assists with home births. We don't have to go back very far in time to find these kinds of healers who diligently cared for their communities to the best of their ability. And again, they were few and far between, access to care. So we still need this today. We still need it just as much as we did then, maybe even more so. For many of us, we learned from our mothers, our grandmothers, and great-grandmothers. They taught us the basics, but we dropped the ball. I know I did. We dropped the ball for the quick trip to the doctor's office instead of continuing education, and it's readily available in our modern society. The internet offers any amount of education in the body and its systems. Books galore on your Kindle can provide the basics that a mother needs to know about how to treat a fever, when to abandon home remedies and get to the ER immediately. You know, what better way to pass the time during pregnancy than educating yourself in the care of your children? But, too often I see that women, they've been convinced that attention to a career is so much more important. That's where they spend all their time. I just can't see it. Caring for family seems a much better choice. Women were then, and I think will be again in the future, traditional keepers of the hearth. Traditionally, women are keepers of the hearth. The responsibilities for cooking, tending the herb gardens, drying the herbs, making medicines, brewing the brews traditionally. They've been done by those loving hands. Women tended to the birth of babies, care of the sick in the homes of their families and friends. There were unique ones that heeded a call to serve wider communities. Are you one of those? Is it brewing inside of you and you haven't responded to the call? I urge you to reconsider. People will always need good medicine. Accordingly, a process of trial and error has been going on for thousands of years, always directed at the same goal of making us well. Therapies that worked were passed down to subsequent generations. Plant remedies that survived this test of time, and especially those shared by different cultures from around the world, have tremendous validity. Coming to understand how these remedies work, the job of objective science, it will never alter the fact that they actually do work. So let's bring back these traditions. Why don't we get away from the cold, impersonal medical office and return to the native community support provided by your village herbalist? And with that, I'm going to talk about one of the things that a village herbalist might talk to you about, and that would be healing infusions. So today's recipe is going to be a nettle infusion, and let me tell you just a little bit about what nettle is, and then I'll talk about the infusion. Nettles, it's an energizing infusion. It works on the adrenals to build energy and stamina. And conversely, with strengthened adrenal function, you can actually expect to rest better and to experience less anxiety. So if you have a severe case and you want healing, 4 to 5 quarts of nettle infusion weekly can yield results in 3 to 6 weeks. That's right, I said 3 to 6 weeks. True health is not a pill that you take and get instant cure. That is the trap of the modern way of thinking. Take a pill, this will fix it. No, if you've damaged your body, it's going to take some time to return it to balance. You didn't run yourself down in one day. So it's going to take time to return your body to balance. But return it will if you nourish it properly. Nourishing infusions ensure that your body stays in tip-top shape. And once you've achieved a balance, a quart a week should be sufficient. And then you're using nourishing infusion just becomes part of your daily lifestyle. That you have your nettles. As far as I know, there are no contraindications to stinging nettle infusion. I'm sure anyone can be allergic to anything, but for the most part, you might experience some side effects like thicker hair, softer skin, stronger veins, an uptick in your enjoyment of life. I like those side effects. So what do you need to make an infusion? You need an ounce of dried nettle herb, and you need a quart of boiling water, and you could add salt if you wanted. You place the herbs in a glass jar. You fill the jar with boiling water, shake it up, and just let it steep like you're making a tea for 4 hours. And more is fine. Even overnight is fine. Then you're going to strain the herb from the water. Use a cheesecloth, or you can use even an old white T-shirt. Again, you're going to keep that liquid. The liquid, you can compost the herbs. You're going to drink the liquid infusion, so you can compost those herbs. You could add salt if you wanted to. So you can refrigerate it. You can drink it cold. It's great, but you got to finish it within a day or two, or it will ferment. All right, final thoughts for today. No matter how stressed life goes for Scott and myself, no matter how fast life goes for Scott and myself, we just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Our life together here on the homestead is everything we could have ever dreamed of and more. We are blessed each spring with the gift of life in our animal offspring and the plants in the orchard and gardens. I invite you all to go to our website and sign up on our mailing list. We'll let you know when our farm tours kick off. We'd love to meet you in person and hear your stories, your hopes, and your dreams. In the meantime, you can come to the farm and shop our grass-fed meats on Tuesday mornings from 10 a.m. to 12 noon and on Saturday afternoons from 3 to 5 p.m. I hope you incorporate nourishing infusions into your daily routine. You might consider replacing your infusion of coffee with an infusion of Nettles. I don't know, that may be too far for some of you, but at least give it some consideration. I've not spoken before about my herbal formulas. As I continue to grow the website, I will be adding listings and information about the herbs I use. You can join our mailing list at www.peacefulheartfarm.com to stay up to date. Currently, there are 3 formulas that I use regularly. I use an Echinacea and Golden Seal formula, one that I call Sleep Well, obviously for sleeping, and I have a heart tonic that I call Heart Health. And I'd love to talk with you about what they contain and when I use them and why. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please hop over to iTunes and give me a 5-star rating and review. Also, please share it with any friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. As always, I'm here to help you taste the traditional touch. Thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.